Welcome to Granites Edge, a Republican-led legislative action program bringing information to our residents of Pelham and New Hampshire. News about legislation that's happening right now in our state capital of Concord that will affect you. Why are we called Granites Edge? Our small town of Pelham, New Hampshire is located on the southern border of our wonderful Granite State, so we're right on the edge. And as all of you know, that edge is exactly what we have over others. Granites Edge. In this program, we'll take a dive into some of the most important legislation of this session. We'll talk to legislators about the challenges in our state and about the committees they serve on. And every month, we'll have a special guest, someone who's an expert in their field who will bring you the truth about important topics that are linked to important legislation that may affect your liberty and freedom. Your host today is Herschel Nunez, an elected state representative right here from Pelham, New Hampshire, who thinks it's important that you know what the legislators know. So stay tuned. We have a great show for you today.
Good morning, and thanks for tuning in to Granites Edge. This is our second show, and we had a great turnout of views on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you all so much for joining us in that program. Today we have another good program for you. Lynne Ober is here. She's a representative from Hudson, and she's going to talk to us about the budget. Later in the show, we'll have John Spottiswoode giving us an update from the Pelham GOP, so stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hi, Lynne. How you doing?
Good morning, Herschel. I'm fine.
Thanks for being here with me today. We had an important week last week in the legislature, and I'm so glad that you're here talking to us about the budget today. But before we start doing that, can you give me a little rundown on who you are and where you're from, just so some of our people out there who don't know who you are will be introduced to you a little bit more?
My husband and I are state reps for Pelham and Hudson. I've been a state rep for 8 terms. I've sat on the budget committee for 7 terms. Russ sits now on science and tech. We travel. We enjoy our family. We have cats. We feed feral cats. I have a whole colony of feral cats that I feed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Lynne, we're both representatives in this district. And when we were campaigning, you gave a lot of us so much great advice, and all of us that ran on our slate, we all won. Mm-hmm. So thank you for the help that you gave us during that time.
You're welcome.
And we've all been applying ourselves really hard this year in the legislature. On our last program, Kim Rice was here, and she gave us an update, sort of brought us up to date on the issues and the challenges that we've had in the legislature. But in this past week, we had some really important bills that came through to be voted on. The budget had gone from the governor's office to finance to be worked on. And then there was a lot of things that happened with the budget and a lot of things that were added. But I want you to kind of give us a rundown about how the Finance Committee works, and then we'll sort of talk about how the budget came through and what we had to do to vote to get the budget passed.
I can tell you're a first-term rep. The first budget vote actually doesn't start with finance. It starts in January when Ways and Means decides how much revenue we're going to have. They came to the floor with a united amount of revenue. On February 14th, Valentine's Day, because state law says the governor has to do it by February 15th, he released his budget. He gave a budget address. And then the budget, which is in HB 1, comes to House Finance. Years ago, there was a court-ordered development of HB 2. HB 2 has all the little sections that have to change in state law in order to make the budget work. And there's always something that has to change. For example, this year, the judicial branch wanted to have more judges. State law says how many they can have. So the governor added 1 judge to Superior Court, 1 judge to District Court. That required a change in state law. The governor works on his budget about 9 months before it ever gets released. At that time, he's made cuts, he's got revenue estimates, he hopes his are right. When House Finance comes out with revenue estimates, if they don't match the governor's, then it's supposed to be we make cuts or we can add. This year, the majority party, of which I am not a member, I'm in the minority, chose to ignore the revenue estimates that the governor had, chose to ignore the revenue estimates that Ways and Means came out that you voted on, because that's really the first vote and the only vote that matters on the budget. And Finance is supposed to live up to what Ways and Means says if the House votes it in. We did not. The Democrats chose to add a lot of positions. They chose to add some new taxes. They chose to add some spending. The budget is up almost $400 million over what the governor put out. Plus, the governor had chosen to spend a lot of one-time revenue. We have millions of dollars in excess revenue from this year because when we cut the business taxes before, we actually have gotten in more business tax revenue than ever before. Businesses have put that tax cut into growing their businesses. That meant more revenue for them. That meant more revenue for the state. The governor put all that one-time spending into HB2 because it's not really part of the budget. Millions of dollars to have a secure psych unit built. Projects such as the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force for $500,000. The Democrats did not want the governor to have any wins as they saw them, and they cut all those out arbitrarily.
They cut out the psychiatric unit and ICACs, what you just said, the International Children's Against Crimes, a piece of the budget.
They cut out $63 million for additional school aid. They cut out an infrastructure fund that would put more money into repairing red-listed bridges. They cut out some individual projects that would have helped in towns across the state with some of their infrastructure issues. All of that was gone.
Wow.
In fact, they didn't even look at it. They took one vote on all of those and cut them all without examining any of them.
Do we know how many pages of a rewrite there was in what they actually submitted to the House?
Herschel, it doesn't work like that. What we get for the budget is about this thick.
Yeah.
What you see is about this thick.
Right.
So there's no actual rewrite. We get line by line. I look at how much money are we spending on office supplies, how many pencils you're buying, how much paper you're buying, all of that stuff for every agency. The House and the Senate never see that. Right. Now, Senate Finance will get the same book with the line by line, so you can look at every individual thing. But an actual quote-unquote rewrite doesn't happen in the way that you're envisioning.
Thank you for explaining that to me. I know I am a first-time legislator, and we all have a ways to go in learning things, and that's why you're here to talk about the budget, and I'm not.
It's a very complicated process because if we printed the entire budget, which is almost 1,500 pages, and gave it to every member in the House, there are 400 of us, and then printed copies to give to every lobbyist who wanted one, you can imagine the expense. So basically what comes out is the executive summary, the totals of what are going to be spent without all the details. And the two finance committees are supposed to go through those details.
And talking about the finance committees, you have Finance 1 and Finance 2, right, the divisions of finance? We're
divided into 3 individual divisions. Every division looks at a set of budgets. For example, I sit on Division 1. We look at 32 separate agencies and the judicial branch, which is a separate branch of government. Division 2 looks at DOT, which is transportation, safety, lottery, fish and game, and education. And Division 3 does one agency and one agency only, and that's Health and Human Services, because that consumes about 50% of the budget.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Health and Human Services. How much of Health and Human Services was changed? Do we know if the expenditures that were brought forth by the governor on that, if there were a lot of changes in there as well?
They didn't make a lot of cuts to the budget. Keep in mind, I said when we started, what they did was they made additions. In HB2, the trailer bill, where he was spending one-time money, that's where they made huge amount of cuts. But in the budget that the governor presented, they added on. So they added on staff, they added on this, that, the other thing, and that's where you see staffing. I mean, everybody's got to have a computer, so there's a cost to connecting to the network. You have to have all the things to keep an employee running. I mean, every business has got these kinds of expenses. You need a desk, you need utilities, you need heat, you have a job to do. So that's what got basically added on. They didn't make a lot of changes. He submitted a very sound budget. However, they did not want him to spend that one-time money on projects for the future, such as the secure psych unit, which we desperately need. So they added in Division 1, we added a ranger here, a forest ranger. We added 2 people into the AG's office to do, one of them to look at election fraud, an attorney to look at them. So they added, they didn't actually subtract. There wasn't a major rewrite. His budget remained intact. It just ballooned, and we're supposed to pass a balanced budget. That's New Hampshire. We don't borrow money.
Right.
So we've never been like California. We've never been like Greece. We're not going to go bankrupt. We spend what we take in. It's no different than what you do at home. How much money do I have to if I want to buy a new car? Can I afford it? Yes or no? Then I wait if the answer is no. Can I pay my utilities? Yes or no? That's what the state does. Can I provide services? Can I fix roads? Can I add funding to school construction? Yes or no? What can I afford? So that's how we look at the budget.
And how many new positions do you know around did they add to the budget for?
They added 87 above what the governor asked for.
87 above. And the appropriation for that is going to come in the form of new taxes to the citizens of the state, to the taxpayers?
Included in the budget, which the governor supported, was to allow sports betting in New Hampshire. So now if you want to vote, if you want to bet with DraftKings, you're no longer doing something illegal. Actually, I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't bet with DraftKings, but if you're doing that at home on a Sunday, you shouldn't be breaking the law. So I was in favor of that. They want to tax everything associated with vaping products, which have never been taxed. They added a capital gains tax. Department of Revenue Administration, which determines how much tax you're going to get in, thought that capital gains would bring in $84 million. At first they thought 94, now it's been downgraded to 84. The Democrats on finance arbitrarily raised that to $150 million and spent $150 million. So the budget is not balanced. The Senate, I understand, is not very happy because they know we cannot borrow money, that we do have to balance the budget. So there are a lot of new taxes.
So the budget came to the House, and we had to vote on the budget. And how did that vote turn out exactly? Let's talk to the viewers about how that vote turned out. I believe that it went strictly party line.
2 Democrats voted with the Republicans against the budget. 2 Democrats I know of did not come to vote because they'd been told they had to vote to support it. They didn't support the budget because it wasn't balanced. They stayed home. And other than that, it was a party line vote.
Party line vote straight down.
Straight down.
And I think that we saw the Republican caucus stick together more than we'd ever seen it stick together in that vote. It was very important. We also did a capital expenditures vote.
That's a different bill. That's House Bill 25. That goes to Public Works Committee. The treasurer, who's Bill Dwyer, goes to Public Works and tells them how much they have. This year they had $120 million. These are bonded projects, so that's no different than if Pelham voted to build a new fire station, which did happen. If you want to bond the money as opposed to paying it, so you want to take a loan out like a house mortgage, that's called a bond. We have to be very careful. If we spend too much money and the bond rating goes down, then every town, every county, every school district that needs to borrow money pays more in interest. So the state controls the bond rating that is paid throughout the state. So we have to be very careful not to bond too much money. And that came to Public Works. They ended up with the treasurer's permission, actually bonding $123 million, and that passed the House on a voice vote that was unanimous. They added some things that we didn't know about. For example, the federal government has agreed to pay 80% of dredging Rye Harbor. Rye Harbor's gotten almost unusable. There's erosion along the coast. The federal government was clicking in $80 million to fix that, and we have a matching part. So we had to add that. There's money for career technical education every year. This year they finished paying the Rochester bill, and they started paying for the renovations at Alvern and Hudson, because that's done on a rotating basis for all the career technical schools. And then all the other bonded things that need to happen. I mean, sometimes a bridge completely needs to be reconstructed. Sometimes you have to rebuild a building. So there's all of that that goes on. There's a whole list of projects that came out. They live within their budget, and that passed the House almost unanimously.
And this comes out every biennium.
Every biennium.
Every biennium. And some of these projects are ongoing projects that need to be funded ongoing.
Yes, for example, the Alvern High School CTE is eligible for $17 million under state law. They got $14.45 million, so next biennium they'll get the remainder. And Rochester this year, this was their second biennium that they got money. They were still eligible for $4 million. Now their CTE renovations are completely paid for. At the same time, we are paying $60 million in school construction loans for projects that have been finished years ago that the state is still paying for. That's an HB1. This kind of CTE money is in addition in House Bill 25.
Nice. That's when we saw 25 come through, I knew that we were encouraged to vote for it, because there's no way that all of us who don't work in finance can understand all of the appropriations that are made in there. And that did go as a voice vote, and it passed right on through.
It passed right on through. They lived right within their budget. If they had gone to $130, $140 million, probably you would have seen the vote be different. But they got a budget. They lived in their budget. You have to do some projects.
Yep. The roads just can't crumble.
No. I want those bridges to stay up. If I drive across a bridge, I want it up.
Now, whenever we did the voice vote, after the voice vote, we went into the budget votes in the House. There were some amendments that were brought to the floor, to the budget. And I want to talk specifically about ICACs, and there was an amendment. Was there an amendment that went in for ICACs to be refunded? To be funded in the bill?
The Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force is run by the police departments. It is run out of Portsmouth. Pelham, Hudson, both participate, and they track Internet crimes against kids. They actually made 132 arrests last year. So we have 132 kids who were being preyed on by predators that across our state, that they made a successful arrest, and that predator is now in jail. That was a $500,000, $500,000 grant in House Bill 2, not actually in the budget, because it's a one-time expenditure. We should have looked at it in Division 1, but Division 2 removed all of those one-time expenditures and nobody looked at it. So when people started complaining, the Democratic chairman of Division 1 immediately blamed the AG and said, well, he should have fought for it. However, the AG is not a police officer. He doesn't go out and try to investigate people, arrest people, and then prosecute them. There's a separation. The police investigate, they arrest. The AG agrees to go to trial and prosecute. So it's not in his funding. It is a grant to an outside source. There was a huge outcry when they discovered that funding was cut. When the Republicans put in an amendment to fund it and bring it back, we wanted to cut funding for a new rest area because that rest area exists. We didn't have to renovate it. We wanted to cut a little money out of an agency that had a surplus, so we could come up with $500,000 without raising money. Once the Democrats discovered we did that, they put in their own amendment. Unfortunately, they cut $200,000 out of renovations to Fort Stark, which is a monument here in New Hampshire that's open to the public. The money was in there for life safety issues for Fort Stark because it's not really well staffed.
There's a few areas of that place that's closed down right now the public can't go into, right?
Yeah, public can't go into.
Right.
So they took $200,000. The agency said they needed $365,000. They're getting $100,000. And then they added another $250,000 of spending in order to cover it. So they spent more money, and they passed their amendment. They voted down our amendment, which was budget neutral. However, the Internet Crimes Against Children is going to be funded, but only because there was a public outcry against what the Democrats had done. The interesting thing is there's been almost as much of a public outcry against not funding the secure psych unit, and they just ignored that.
Are we going to get a secure psych unit? Do we know yet? That's not going to happen,
There's
right?
no funding, no.
There's no funding for it.
There's no funding.
And we desperately needed those beds.
Well, right now we have a secure psych unit that's in the men's prison, and they have 60 beds. Of the 60 beds, they're not entirely full, but of the 60 beds, there are 26 people in beds who have not committed a crime, who have not gone to court and been committed to jail, but are now in the prison in their secure psych unit. So what they wanted to do was take those people out of there, build an addition to the New Hampshire hospital, which does psychiatric care, build the 60 beds, remove some of the other patients who are in the psych unit, and expand the teen wing, because we have so many people getting addicted to opiates and needing a place to go start their rehab. Many of those people have mental health issues going along with it. You can't get somebody off an addiction if you're not treating the underlying issues. So it would have increased the beds, and they've chosen not to do that.
Well, that's a shame that we're not going to get that psych unit. I know that the money was earmarked for that in the one-time spending portion of the budget. There were many other things, of course, that were in the one-time spending portion of the budget that all of that money has been moved over to somewhere else.
It's been cut and spent elsewhere.
And spent elsewhere.
And sometimes they're spending it on recurring projects. For example, if you add, as they did, 87 staff members and you don't have money to add 87 staff members, the way the governor had done it, this is one-time money you won't have 2 years from now.
Right.
It's like you got a bonus at work.
Right.
Something spectacular because you've been working on a project. You know you won't get another one in 2 years because you're not going to be working on that kind of a project. So you take that one-time money and you do something one time with it. Maybe you save it, maybe you buy a new car.
Right.
But you don't say, I'll buy a bigger house where I'm going to have to keep paying this mortgage payment 15 or 20 years in the future because I won't have that income in 2 years.
That bonus may not be there next year.
Yeah, it won't be there.
And so this money was cut and it was spent somewhere else. And it was also overspent because, just like you said just a few moments ago, there was an appropriation made in the budget that was $84 or $94 million. Well, really was $150 million.
Yes, the budget spent $150 million.
And the total increase in budget was around
$400 million.
$400 million. And that's money that they say, when I say they, I mean the Democratic left portion of our legislature, they say that will be money coming in with all these new taxes that they're instituting.
No, actually they didn't do that. They know they don't have enough money to cover it. Their idea is to start an income tax. In fact, they have an income tax in HB2. They put in an unsustainable plan for family leave, paid family leave, that will charge, for example, we have some high school students here with us this morning running the taping, which is great. They're now going to have to start paying for the paid family leave, but they will never qualify for it. They don't work enough hours.
They don't work enough hours,
all the kids who work at Canopy Lake Park,
right.
You've got them from Pelham, we've got them from Hudson, so you know we've got a lot of our young people are going to get summer jobs at Canopy Lake Park. They will have to pay this income tax. They will not qualify for it. Their plan takes $15 million to write a system, makes the state government into an insurance company. The governor had a plan in there that used existing insurance companies. He said, let's partner with the private people. Let's use Metropolitan Life. Let's look at Aflac as a partner because that's paid family leave. Let's look here. Let's look there. Let's make this voluntary. You need more paid family leave. Let's lower the cost by joining a consortium with Vermont. Something we've done with the ABLE program. We're in a consortium with Ohio for the ABLE program. Keeps the cost down. all the people who participate pay a lower cost to maintain it, and allow a paid family leave. The Democrats removed his, put in the more expensive one with the income tax. They would like to have a sales tax and an income tax on your salary. In order to pay for what they're spending, they think that will have to be implemented next year.
Wow.
If it's not implemented next year and you go into the following year, you're going to have a budget that's going to be facing a significant amount of cuts, services people have gotten used to in order to balance the budget if you manage to squeak through these 2 years by spending all the money in our savings account, which we call the rainy day account.
Well, by putting the money from the capital expenditure, from the part that was cut out, the one-time deductions or the one-time spending that was cut out, by moving that into recurring portions, how does that get funded later? Because
we don't know. That's why I'm saying they want to have an income tax or a sales tax. And we've got a problem up north. I mean, if you read the newspaper this morning, which I did, the rain we're having today, lightly here, is supposed to be heavy up north. They've still got heavy snowpack. They're expecting at least a week of flooding. That means people's homes damages, people's businesses damaged. The state usually kicks in money as well as FEMA, because there's usually a match on FEMA to try to help people who are flooded out. And that's likely going to happen in the next week in New Hampshire.
it's tough for them up there right now. They
It
go
is.
through the thaw. They call it the thaw, which runs into mud.
Yeah, and they're having heavy rain with it.
So the budget now has left the House. What's the next stop for it?
Oh, the Senate's already started to work on it. And the nice thing about the Senate, they always have more money than we have. And people say to me, well, how can the Senate have more money than the House? Well, it's easy. We don't know how many what the revenue dollars are going to be for March, because this left the House right as we were getting those. They're going to have the revenues for April. April's when business taxes are due. It's a big revenue month in New Hampshire. And they're going to have the actual revenue numbers for May. The House is looking at a plan, but no idea if that's going to be correct or not. Since we've been getting more business taxes than more business income from our taxes than I expected, I think in April the Senate will have more money than we had to spend. And so they have 3 more months of actual revenue. They can look at what's come in. Do we have a shortfall? Do we have another outage? How can we deal with this? What's the projection? They also frequently redo the revenue estimates for the next 2 years based on the fact they've gotten 3 more months of actuals. So what's the projection for revenues for the next 2 years? So the Senate has to go through that. They have to go through the same agencies we did. They have to look at all the budgets. They have to look at everything that was added. They will not be looking at the things that were taken out. Although the secure psych unit got so much play in the press that I don't think they can just ignore that the House took it out and didn't leave anything behind. But they could if they wanted to.
So they're going to be looking at the budget for a certain time period before we hear too much more about it, correct?
They will look at it. They will vote it on the Senate floor. This is kind of like you guys at home. You should watch Russ and me try to buy a couch. I like this one. He likes that one. You know, I want this one. He hates that one. So let's look at this one. So it's likely that in $1 billion budget, and we're talking several billion,
Right.
that it will come back changes that don't match the House. And then there's a thing called a committee conference. Members of the Senate Finance, members of House Finance get together and work on a compromise to try to come to a reasonable decision on the budget. That budget then will be voted on June 27th in both the House and the Senate. This is a mistake, but that's when it's going to be voted. Those dates were set by the Democrats. It's a mistake because the governor is allowed 5 days, excluding Sunday, by state law to sign or veto a bill or to let a bill go into law without signature. However, bills on the 27th will go to a process called enrolled bills, make sure everything's accurate before it gets to the governor's desk. This can take up to 2 weeks. Even if they hurry this and they get there on Friday, that's the 28th. Saturday's the 29th. Sunday doesn't count in his 5 days, but that's June 30th. July 1st is Monday, and there will be no money to run government because he will not have had his 5 days unless they also pass a continuing resolution to keep the budget from this year funding the state government before.
Because we have to have funding for July.
This is a shutdown in the state, and when we had the shutdown from Congress earlier in the year, it was Congress that refused to pass a continuing resolution. And remember listening to those people working but not getting any pay? It's because Congress failed to pass a continuing resolution to fund those salaries at the existing level. So you don't get any raises, you don't get any step increases if you're eligible for one, but you continue to get your salary paid as it existed. I believe the House and the Senate will pass a continuing resolution. You can't suddenly on Monday, July 1st, as you approach a holiday weekend, say, sorry, everybody stay home. We didn't give the governor the legal time to sign or veto the budget.
So more than likely there will be a continuing resolution.
I believe there has to be a continuing resolution. You just can't leave people without pay. I couldn't believe Congress did that to government, but they did.
And then we have the 5 days that it goes to the governor's office. He has 5 days to make a decision on whether or not he wants to pass or veto or let it turn into law. And what do we think? Can we have a projection? What do you think will happen there with the budget?
If he got the budget to pass the House, he would veto it. I have no idea what he'll get out of the Senate.
Okay.
So it depends as what changes get made in the Senate and then what we agree to, although I won't be on the committee of conference because I'm not in the majority party, what the majority party agrees to at the committee of conference.
And if the budget is vetoed by the governor, what's the next process on that? It comes back to the House and Senate in order to have votes again?
No. That process will be determined by the majority party.
Okay.
When Governor Hassan vetoed the Republican budget the last time she was in, it had the business tax cuts. And you know, the majority of our business is small business. We don't have a big Kellogg plant here. We don't have a huge facility for Ford or Chrysler. We have predominantly small businesses. So when you talk about a tax cut, you're looking at tax cut on your neighbor's business. Maybe he's running a landscaping business. Maybe he's a welder. Maybe he's selling State Farm insurance and he's got a small agency here. You're talking about small business. And Governor Hassan didn't want to do that, so she vetoed the budget. And we literally did nothing. They worked with her. They worked with some of the people. There were some conversations behind the scenes. Governor Hassan then ultimately, we came back together, we looked at the budget, we made very small modifications, we sent almost the same budget back to her, and this time she let it become law. Because there had been enough public outcry, I want this, I want that, I want this is a reasonable budget, we need those business tax cuts, we need this, we need that. She had vetoed it because of business tax cuts. What the Democrats will do, will they start to craft another budget in each finance committee? I don't know. It will be up to the majority party. So first we need to see if it's going to be vetoed or not.
Right.
And then we'll
we have a
look at
ways
what
to
they
go
wanna
before
do.
that happens.
We
still
have months to go
a
before
couple of months
that
to go
happens.
before that happens. And so we won't really know anymore until that point.
No.
Well, you know, the budget process is a difficult process. I have been by your committee when you were working, and you have put many, many hours into everybody in the finance team has put many hours into making a budget that can be sent to the House, that can be voted on. And I know that it did not go the way we would have preferred for it to go, but it did come to the House, and the majority passed the budget through to the Senate.
Yes.
And the Senate is now looking for what they can look at, and they're going to be looking
They've
at
already
estimated revenues coming in for the next couple of months to see
Yeah.
how that can apply and make projections.
Senate has a Ways and Means Committee, as we do. Ways and Means does the revenues. So their Ways and Means Committee has already been working on their revenues.
Right.
They will vote their revenues. They will not necessarily vote the House revenues. They will by now have April revenues. They will know how much business revenue is up because you kind of get a daily look at what's going along, and we're past the middle of the month, so they have more than half a month's worth of business revenues in. They're going to have different revenues than we had.
Now, the business revenue is up because of the tax cuts that were put out last biennium.
That seems to be the case. You talk to the business owners and they've said, we're paying less tax, we're putting it into, we've hired more staff, we've done this, we've done that, we've got more product, we invested in this, we invested in that.
Well, what happened to those tax cuts in this budget?
The budget suspended the next round of tax cuts and left the tax cuts that have happened. There should be another round.
Mm-hmm.
The Senate has gone from we're going to roll them all the way back to we're not going to roll them back. So I don't know where that's going to end up.
Wow. Well, I know that that a lot of businesses have stated that they're doing much better because of the tax cuts. And I think that we saw a lot more revenue come in than I think was even projected because businesses were able to expand and hire more people and sell more products, and therefore more business tax was paid because of the less of burden on them, which I think we understood in policy. I don't know that the Democrats understand that in policy because they're freezing the business tax cuts where they are right now.
The Democrats always want to spend more money, and that's how they got to, even when Ways and Means passed the capital gains tax, because that wasn't part of the budget, that's a separate bill. Mm-hmm. They passed the capital gains tax, and the House Democrats raised the amount of income that Ways and Means said they were going to get arbitrarily. Now remember, the revenue estimates you voted on in January mm-hmm. were $56 million less than the governor's. So had this been a normal year, we would have been looking at making $56 million worth of cuts out of the governor's budget, and then hoping when revenues came in the Senate mm-hmm. that they had enough money to put some of those things back in, which is normally what happens. The House Democrats ignored that $56 million cut and said, what else do you want? What didn't you get that you asked for? That was the message that was asked of every agency. What else did you want? In this case, DCYF got nearly 30 new staff. Mm-hmm. Beginning of July, last July 1, mm-hmm. they got nearly 30 new staff. So in a year, DCYF has gotten almost 60 new staff. They have not been able to fill all of the positions they were given last July 1st because of our economy. Makes it very difficult to hire people. So many people are working. Mm-hmm. So DCYF already had open positions from the nearly 30 positions open on July 1st that they hadn't been able to hire. They mm-hmm. have the money. There's nobody out there to do the job. I mean, you're looking at social workers and you're looking at some supervisors of social workers. So you're looking at adding specialized skills. Mm-hmm. They weren't able to fill those. Now they've gotten another 30 new positions.
And they haven't filled the other positions.
And they haven't filled the other positions because of our economy.
Right.
Our economy is making it hard to hire people. I mean, a pizza place closed because it couldn't hire people to serve pizza.
Well, we have, what, 2.4% unemployment, the
yes.
best in the nation
yes.
in our state here, which means the majority of our working public is already working.
Yeah.
And in order to fill those positions, they're either going to have to come from out of state, or there's going to have to be incentive for college graduates to stay here and take on jobs here in the state.
Yep.
People move here all the time. I think I read this week that we had 6,700 families move here last year, which is also a boon in population growth for us as well. Those people come in and they work and they start businesses, and more tax revenue comes in from those businesses. But not being able to fill those positions, do they just hold them and hopefully they can fill them? How long will that stay in their budget before it gets moved away?
It's called an authorized position, mm-hmm. and then it's called an authorized funded position, because you can have a position that was authorized but the funding was removed in a budget cycle. So the funding will stay for 2 years until the budget comes around again. The positions will be authorized. They will be funded. If they can find people, they can hire them. Unfortunately, the state, unlike a big business, doesn't pay relocation dollars. So it's harder for us to actually hire people. So to reach out into Missouri or Arkansas and see if we have social workers who would like to relocate, we might, but we have no relocation dollars to bring them. If you were a private company, you could offer up to X relocation dollars. You work for us for this many years after you move here, you don't have to pay back those relocation dollars.
Right.
I mean, that's very typically done, but not in government. So that's the downfall for us, even when we have a position funded. If you can find somebody in Maine, Vermont,
Even
Massachusetts,
yeah.
willing to come up here, well, you don't pay income tax up here. So, you know, you move up here, you're not paying the income tax, you're getting away. Massachusetts has a pretty hefty income tax. Yeah, they will move. But if you have to look farther than that, those people are looking for relo money, and there's no relocation money by the government to bring them in.
So they're just going to have to keep searching and searching until they can get those positions filled.
Yeah.
Because they're authorized and funded.
They're authorized and funded. Hopefully, I mean, these positions, these new positions, well, the ones that were funded last July, they're still open, are available now. But college graduations are coming up.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have some, I hope, new people who would be looking for a job. Mm-hmm. You've got a newly graduated social worker. Perfect job to move in. You've got enough support from senior people and supervision that you're not having to work by yourself. You've got a team there. So you might get a lot of those people. So in June and July, there's a possibility that they will be able to fill all the positions they've been given. And then if the budget passes, they'll have more positions. If the budget gets vetoed and a continuing resolution is passed, the existing positions would be funded, but the new positions in the budget would not be. So they couldn't hire new staff.
Only what they've been given
Only
permission
what
to
is
hire
in
already.
this
What's already funded.
year's
Right.
budget.
Right, which started last July, correct? Or
Yes.
last biennial?
Yes, we work July 1st through June 30th.
Yep.
It's our fiscal year.
Okay. Well, I think that kind of brings us up to date on the budget. We're going to be hearing more about the budget from the Senate. That'll be coming up in a few weeks, probably, a few weeks
Hopefully.
to a couple of months.
Senate usually meets a lot without making any cuts, so you can go watch them and you can go listen to their questions, because it's all done in public. Everything's done in public. But they wait almost to the last end when they know how much revenue they've got, when they know how their revenue estimates have changed, and then they will bring in a flurry of motions and make whatever adjustments they're going to make almost within a week.
When the budget gets there, the continuing to the governor, a continuing resolution will probably be made as well.
We have to have, the House and the Senate, have to have passed a continuing resolution on June 27th when we meet for committee conference votes, because we won't meet again until the new fiscal year starts. So that would be the last date for the House and the Senate to both agree on a continuing resolution. Both bodies have to pass it. If we pass it and it goes to the governor, I'm sure the governor would sign that immediately, because he doesn't want New Hampshire workers to be like Congress left all the national workers working without any pay. I mean, for
Right.
Congress to have done that was just, I couldn't understand that. Why would you ask somebody to work without pay? You can file a continuing resolution, you can keep the money flowing, people
Right.
can get paid.
Paychecks get delivered,
Yes,
and they keep working.
and they keep working.
Now, July is sort of a non-legislative month.
It's a definite non-legislative month. We've always been told you may not come to the House and be paid for anything, mileage or anything, in July. And there are a couple of reasons for that. If there are any repairs needed, they bring all the repair people in and they do everything you have to. If you go up in July, you almost always will find it's almost impossible to walk down a hall. They're stacked with furniture as they paint or they clean the carpets or do something. I mean, it's just really a safety issue to be in both the State House and the Legislative Office building in July.
So if the governor vetoes the budget, then when can they call for a veto override vote?
Whenever they want, but I don't think they don't have the votes. The majority party doesn't have the votes to override a veto if the minority party sticks together, and we really can't go $400 million in a hole. My constituents, both in Pelham and in Hudson, have bills they have to pay. They can't afford an income tax. They can't afford to suddenly have 8 or 9% of their salary taken away. They're counting on making their car payment, paying their utility bills, buying shoes for their kids. That can't happen quickly, and that's what would need to be done to fund that budget. So you're either going to have to make some cuts, you're going to have to hope that revenue goes up way more than anybody thought, because to get $400 million between now and the end of June is just not realistic. We cannot be putting that burden on the backs of the hardworking people in New Hampshire. We have to make reasonable compromises to live within our budget.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I think that the people that are viewing us in this program also understand that. I know that I've received many emails from people in our area asking for what they know about the budget, and they know that there's so much more spending that's going in. Please fight to make sure that extra spending isn't in there. I haven't talked to anyone that wants an income tax.
Me neither.
I haven't talked to anyone who wants a sales tax. I haven't talked to anyone who thinks that the business taxes should be frozen or should go up because it's going to cost them so much more to run their businesses. So I think it's going to be very interesting coming up to see what happens in the Senate and towards the end of June to find out what happens when the final budget is delivered to the governor's desk. I know there's a process that you have to go through in that, or that the state has to go through in order to get it to his desk, but it'll be very interesting to see what happens down the road. You know, Lynn, I want to thank you so much for coming on the program today. This was so much fun having you. You're one of my favorites, and you know that. And we have a lot of fun working together at the State House. But it is a lot of work, and it has been extremely difficult for the Finance Committee this year. So thank you for all of your hard work that you've put in, and thank you for being on our program.
I've enjoyed being here.
Folks, we'll be back in a few minutes. We're going to have John Spottiswoode on to give us an update from the Pelham GOP. Well, welcome back to the program. We have with us John Spottiswoode from the Pelham GOP, and he's going to give us an update about what's going on with the GOP for this month. Hey, John.
Hi, Herschel.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
So we've had some fun this month with the GOP. We had a county meeting.
Yes.
Last program, we talked about some awards that may be given out to the different towns in our county. How did Pelham do?
Pelham did quite well, thanks to the excellent voters we have in this town. Pelham did win 4 awards, 4 out of the 9.
Wow, that's a lot.
Shared one with our partners in Hudson.
So what were those awards?
We won social media, best election volunteerism, community outreach, and voter registration drive, and we shared best recruitment with Hudson.
Wow.
Who also won best fundraising.
That's awesome.
So our District 37 won 6 of the 9 awards available.
Well, we also had what I think is probably the most successful slate
Yes.
In the state as well, right?
Yes.
I mean, all 11 of us got elected. And I know I said this on the last program as well, but I'm very proud of the fact that all 11 of us got elected.
Yep. Probably the strongest district in New Hampshire right
Now,
now.
other awards were given out during that event that happened. This was at the Hillsborough County Lincoln Reagan dinner, right?
Correct.
And that was held at
Murphy's Tap Room in Carriage House in Bedford.
I wasn't able to attend that event, but I know that a lot of people said they had a lot of fun.
It was a good event.
And Pelham cleaned up, and this isn't the first time Pelham's cleaned up at those events.
No. We have a pretty consistent record of winning awards at year after year.
Well, it's because of all the hard work that goes into all of each month. The Pelham GOP puts in hard work to prepare for the next month and to prepare for the next election cycle.
Yes.
We have an event coming up in a couple of weeks, I think, here at Pelham GOP. You want to talk about that for a few minutes?
Certainly. It is our Voter Appreciation Night. It is on Thursday, May 9th, 7 p.m. It's being held at the Pelham VFW. We rent the building to have the event, and basically, we just want to say thank you to the voters. We asked them to show up and turn out, and boy did they ever. It was our best in a year that wasn't particularly great. We put up the best numbers ever in Pelham.
Wow.
In a midterm election.
Did we have something like, it was like a 60% or?
64.45.
64, okay, say 64.5% of the voters were Republican voters.
Yes.
And that's an awesome turnout. And we've got to make sure that happens again in 2020.
Yep.
Now, at the event, what can people expect at the event?
At
the voter appreciation event?
Okay. We're going to have some food, obviously. Food is always good.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the evening, so the least we can do is feed you.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be drinks, non-alcoholic, of course, beverages. And we have some prizes. What we did is we mailed out some flyers and to some voters, and we attached a little note and a little raffle ticket. So what we're hoping is who gets those will bring the raffle ticket with them, and whoever shows up from social media and stuff, we're going to give everybody a ticket, a raffle ticket, and put them in a bucket, and we'll do some door prizes. We have some neat gifts for people. Just some good conversation. We're hoping people will see what's going on in our state and with the upcoming election, and maybe want to get a little bit more involved and come join us and help us win some more awards.
Now, who's going to be there? I know I'll be there.
Yes.
I think the rest of our state reps, most of whom are planning to be there as well.
Correct.
So the public can actually come and meet their state reps in person if they haven't met them yet. I know we went around and knocked on doors and we shook hands at the polling stations and did so many things, but there's no way that we can meet everyone. That's why we want them to come down and see us.
Correct. Yep. Just it's our way of saying, we asked you to come vote, and you voted for you guys, and you kept Pelham red and our district red, and we want to say thank you for that. So you guys will be there. There could be a few other people that show up that might want to say thank you.
Well, what's going on past the Pelham GOP for May 9th? What do we have coming up later on?
Obviously, we have our regular monthly meetings. This one happens to be May 6th, right before the event. We'll probably plan on that. We don't ever stop. We're always planning going forward.
Now, the Pelham GOP meets on the first Monday of every month, right?
Correct.
Okay.
7 p.m.
And 7 p.m. at the VFW here in Pelham.
Yes.
Right.
Unless there's if it's a holiday, we'll either move it back or forward a month. But pretty consistently the first Monday of every month.
The first Monday of every month. So for those of you who have never been to a meeting but you want to come to a meeting, come on down the first Monday of every month at 7 p.m.
Yep.
Okay.
We always have food. We always have food.
There's always food. Yep. There's always food and drinks.
Yes.
There's always beverages. And in those meetings we go over what we had decided on from the previous month before. We talk about the committee itself and the goings-on of the committee, and we also talk about what's coming down the pipeline. Sometimes it's in legislation, sometimes it's in events that are going on, sometimes it's a statewide event or an area event or a town event like we're having on May the 9th. Mm-hmm. And the folks just need to come on down and get involved and become members of the Pelham GOP.
Yep. I mean, we welcome you. We welcome any Republican, any registered Republican in Pelham can become a member. You don't have to become a member if you don't want to. Just come to the meetings. We give legislative updates. Not everyone is going to go door knocking. We understand that. But when we do sine waves, when we on election day, we can always find something for you to participate in. And if you can't do that, you can still be part. You can still come and just get some information from the reps. And it's a great way for the voters to meet their reps. Not every rep can come to every meeting. We understand that, but you guys circle through pretty good. So it's a good way. And it's also a great way if a constituent has an issue, you can talk directly to your representatives because they're right there. So.
And there usually are a few reps that show up at the meeting.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, well, I think that's a pretty good thing going on. We have an event coming up on May the 9th. Everybody come on down to this event and have a good time with all of us. John, thanks for coming on the program. John's going to be on here with us every month going forward to give us an update from the Pelham GOP. We're really happy that we're having this segment about the Pelham GOP. I think it's important for those viewers that are out there that are like-minded like we are, know that what's going on with us, and if they can't get to a meeting, at least they can watch this program and they can find out about what's going on with the Pelham GOP.
Correct, and we'll always try to give you as many updates as we possibly can, and you can always keep tabs on if you're on social media, Pelham, New Hampshire GOP. We'll post the meetings there and whatever information is needed.
Well, John, thank you so much for being on the program again today.
Thank you, Representative.
We'll see you again next month.
Yep.
And that's going to wrap it up for us today, folks. We've had a great time with our guests, and we learned a lot about the budget. We know that there's a nice GOP event coming up on May the 9th, so come on down and attend that and meet some reps and say thank you to the folks at the Pelham GOP for all the hard work that they do. And this is also a thank you to you guys for helping us get elected. So stay tuned for a third program coming out, and we'll see you then.
We'd like to thank each and every one of you for tuning in to today's program. Each month, we'll bring you new information about legislation that's being proposed in our state capitol. If you'd like to find us or comment on our program, contact us on Facebook at Granites Edge. We also have a YouTube channel by the same name. Links that were mentioned in our program today will be listed there for your convenience. Tune in next time to Granites Edge.